Yes.
Thank you. Today's sanctions against the Islamic Republic, along with the UK sanctions and EU sanctions, showed a very remarkable unity. But on the same day, today, we have a comment from Joseph Borrell about listing IRGC as a terrorist group. So he said that this cannot be decided without a court decision first, and then EU is going to proceed with that. And then he said something interesting. He said, you cannot say, I consider you a terrorist because I don't like you. This is what he said, quote unquote. And also, the Islamic Republic Foreign Minister said that he has assurance from Borrell that IRGC is not going to list it as a terror organization. Do you have any comment on this development?
We've heard a number of statements from the Iranian foreign minister that are dubious, if not outright lies. So I would just keep that broader context in mind when you point to statements from the Iranian foreign minister. When it comes to our European allies, we welcome Europe's strong and principled approach to the IRGC. As you know, the IRGC remains designated by the United States as a foreign terrorist organization and especially designated global terrorist. We've also sanctioned many IRGC leaders individually for their involvement in terrorism and human rights abuses. You mentioned the latest tranche of human rights sanctions that we announced in conjunction with many of our closest partners earlier today. We applaud the EU's recent designations of IRGC officials and entities for their involvement in providing drones to Russia, which are being used to fuel Russia's unconscionable attacks on Ukraine's critical infrastructure. Our European allies recognize the threat, the challenges posed by the IRGC and Iran more broadly. We have enjoyed exceptionally close cooperation and coordination with Europe on confronting these challenges.
And that his hesitation, Borrell's refraining from this, which is very the opposite of what we are hearing from other, let's say, parliament members, like Germany's member at the parliament, European Parliament. Do you think this hesitation is coming from a hope that he has? I cannot help but wonder, maybe Borrell is still hopeful that JCPOA is going to be revived. Can this a sign of that? Or
I couldn't speak to the High Representative's comments. In fact, I would refer you to the EU on his comments, and these are questions for our European allies. But what is not a question is the JCPOA. We've been very clear that the JCPOA is not on the agenda, has not been on the agenda for months. Iran has consistently turned its back on opportunities to pursue mutual return to compliance with the JCPOA, and as a result of what Iran is doing around the world and to its own people. We have focused on sending very clear messages to Iran. Stop killing your people, stop providing drones to Russia for use in Ukraine, and release the Americans that you are wrongfully detaining. Yeah, Shannon.
Same topic. Can you say if the U.S. has given the European Union any consult on whether to designate the IRGC? And can you say just would the U.S. welcome, while it's in the hands of the EU, would the U.S. welcome such a designation?
This is a question for the European Union, but what I can tell you is that we routinely discuss the challenges and threats posed by the IRGC with allies and partners around the world. And of course, that includes with our European allies bilaterally, but also with the EU as a whole. There is no illusion in Europe about the challenges or threats that the IRGC poses. We're always looking for ways that we can work with our European allies to counter the malicious activity of the IRGC, other Iranian proxy groups, other groups that Iran has supported. And we have applauded the recent designations that we've seen from our European allies of IRGC officials and entities for their involvement in some of what we've already discussed, Iran's provision of drones to Russia, and as a result of the human rights abuses that we've seen in Iran. Yes, Elizabeth?
I could follow up on that. On today's human rights sanctions, do you have any indications that the designations of Iranian officials are having an impact internally, including on the security forces' behavior?
It is always difficult to delve into a hypothetical or a counterfactual like that. We want to send, and I think we are sending, a very clear message to the Iranian regime, two messages really, that the world is watching and the world is prepared to take action in response to the violence that Iranian officials are perpetrating against their own people. This is not the first round of sanctions that we've announced against Iranian officials in response to the protests that we've seen in Iran since late last year. If Iran continues to engage in these human rights abuses, we will continue to apply even more pressure on Iran. But of course, this is about human rights. We have other concerns with this regime, and we are going to use every relevant and appropriate authority to hold it account on the various fronts, from human rights to its provision of UAV technology to Russia, to the challenges that are posed by its nuclear program, to its support for terrorist groups and proxies as well.